After Joe Bonanno had allegedly tried to have Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese murdered, various members of the commission met in 1964 to determine whether or not they should kill the Bonanno family boss. The commission then assigned Genovese mobster Tommy Eboli the task of investigating the accusations against Joe Bonanno. Some of Eboli's thoughts on the Bonanno situation were documented by a confidential source and provided to the FBI. Let's check it out. Welcome to OC Shortz, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, we're going to take a quick look at some of the FBI files that documented how the commission debated whether or not to kill Joe Bonanno. As most of you are probably aware, in the early 1960s, it is alleged that Joseph Bonanno, along with Joseph Magliocco, the new boss of the Profaci crime family, plotted together to have rival bosses Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese murdered. However, Gambino and Lucchese became aware of the plan, and the commission then summoned Magliocco and Bonanno to explain themselves. Joe Magliocco came as requested and admitted his guilt. He was then removed from his position and banished. However, Joe Bonanno refused to come before the commission. What is rarely discussed is that Joe Magliocco took sole responsibility for the murder plot and did not implicate Bonanno at all. And so, Genovese mobster Tommy Ryan Eboli was assigned the task of investigating the accusations made against Joe Bonanno. A source described by the FBI as highly confidential documented Eboli's thoughts on the whole situation. In the following file, we see the summary of a conversation that Tommy Ryan had with Mike Genovese, brother of imprisoned family boss Vito. Eboli begins his conversation with Michael Genovese, stating that the commission is handling the Joe Bonanno situation and not doing a very good job of it. Eboli noted that Sam from Elizabeth, Samuel DeCavalcante, has sent a message to Joe Bonanno that the commission wants to see him. Apparently, the commission has stated that they are not going to send Angelo Bruno or Joseph Zerilli back here, New York, again. Straight up, we see that Tommy Ryan is critical of the way the commission is dealing with the whole Bonanno situation. It must be noted that at this time, Tommy Ryan isn't a member of the commission. He'd been captain of the famous Greenwich Village crew, and had been elevated to be part of a panel of mobsters in the Genovese family, who would help run the family whilst Vito Genovese was in prison. At this time, Jerry Catena was essentially acting boss of the family. Tommy Ryan states that New Jersey boss Sam DeCavalcante had sent a message to Bonanno requesting he attend a meeting. Interestingly, this is the fourth time that the commission has requested Bonanno come before them. He had not responded to the previous 3 requests. It is also stated that the New York commission members will not be asking for fellow commission members Angelo Bruno, boss of Philadelphia, and Joseph Zerilli to be present when Bonanno comes before them. The summary later reads, Eboli then stated that he was the only person picked by the commission on the committee to investigate Bonanno. Continuing, Eboli stated he then asked for permission to speak before the commission, because Jerry Catena was the chairman. Eboli stated that he had got up and said, I will do whatever the commission tells me to do, but first I have something on my mind which I want to clear up. Eboli, then addressing himself to the commission, explained that he had been taught in a situation like this to say what was in his heart. Eboli then says that he wants to clear up 2 points in his mind. The first point, Eboli says, of course, it's established here that this fellow has received 4 messages from the commission to make an appearance here. He says he did not get them, and we know that the messages were given out. On the other hand, I believe that he has a right to ask for Angelo Bruno and Joe Zerilli and Sam DeCavalcante now that he has been injected into this thing here, and that he made a promise that he will make an appointment if these 3 fellows named were here. I believe there was 4 and one more is 5. But if the guy refuses this here, the order to appear before the commission, then you can take any kind of action you have to take. Tommy Brown, Lucchese, then turned around and said, "What are you trying to do? Change the decision that we've already made, that he is off the commission?" Eboli then replied, "Tommy, I'm not trying to change nothing. Whatever the commission does, and whatever it has done, it will stand. I'm only saying this here to bring this guy in. I believe that he has a right to ask for these guys here. I may be wrong. This is what I want to learn. This is what I said before." Eboli, now quoting Thomas Lucchese, "We sent Angelo Bruno there, and he should have recognised Angelo Bruno. He says if the guy wants to hinge on a technicality, he's only stalling for time." Eboli then states, "Well, you put me on this committee over here, and now I've got to go question these guys. If they got any beefs, and if they got anything against their Borgata. I don't believe that we have a right to go and probe in a brigade. I don't believe that the commission has a right to tell a boss to resign, unless they got facts, and there is a disturbance in the family. I investigate, I listen to it, or whoever gives beefs on the side." Apologies for the massive chunk of text there, but there were some interesting points that we can look at. Firstly, Tommy Ryan states that he was the only man picked by the commission to investigate Bonanno, essentially stating that his views on the matter are worth listening to. Tommy Ryan then requests to speak and highlights some points. Tommy Ryan does say that Joe Bonanno has the right to explain himself in front of the full commission, including the members from Philadelphia and Detroit. Tommy Lucchese seems angered by Eboli's points, stating that they have already removed Bonanno from the commission, and that Tommy Ryan is trying to reverse a commission decision. Tommy Ryan then states, "I don't believe that the commission has a right to tell a boss to resign, unless they got facts." This is interesting because historically Tommy Ryan is depicted as being a bit of a hothead, but seems to be taking a more measured approach in this situation. At this point in time, there was no proof that Bonanno had plotted against Gambino and Lucchese. As mentioned, Joe Magliocco did not implicate Joe Bonanno at all when he came before the commission. The document continues with Tommy Ryan saying he needs to investigate the allegations against Joe Bonanno. He then enters into a somewhat heated exchange with Carlo Gambino. Apparently, another member of the commission, possibly Carlo Gambino, addresses Eboli and says, "Tommy Ryan, let me tell you something. You tell them we got no beefs against this brigade." Tommy then quotes himself speaking to Gambino. "Carl, excuse me 1 second, only for 1 second, while I answer you on this here. I didn't say whether you had a beef against the brigade. I didn't say whether anybody else had a beef against the brigade. I say, does the people in the brigade have a beef against their boss? What's your problem is that Joe is not the problem of the brigade. The brigade stands with Joe." He turns around and he says, "Well, we got beefs against Joe, and we don't believe that he is fit to be a boss." Eboli then repeats his conversation to the commission in answer to Gambino. "Well, I didn't hear no beefs." "Jerry, did you ever hear any beefs?" He says no. I says, "We discussed a lot of things here, but we never discussed anybody that brought a beef here against this brigade or against Joe Bonanno. Now, if you got beefs," I says, "Carl, that's a different story." Gambino: "Are you familiar with this thing here from the beginning to the end, like everybody else? Have you attended every meeting? Was you there?" Eboli states, "Yes, I was there, but I never heard beefing." Gambino then says, "How could you say that?" He says to me, "When we went over to house." Gambino's beef, according to Eboli, is that Bonanno made his son the boss of Arizona, with the purpose in mind that the son would eventually become boss of California. He, Gambino, says, "What business has he got to do this without consulting the commission? You told us we got no beefs?" Gambino continuing, Joe Magliocco gave an order to the boys to kill me and Tommy Brown. When he gave this order, Tommy, you was there at the meeting when this thing was brought out, when Joe Magliocco said that Joe Bonanno's son was in the other room. Again, quite a lot of information to digest. Tommy Ryan is stating that as far as he is aware, there were no active beefs with the Bonanno family. Something that Jerry Catena backs up. Gambino then states that Joe Bonanno was trying to install his own son Bill as boss of Arizona and then California, without commission approval. Carlo Gambino then points out that Joe Magliocco tried to have him and Tommy Lucchese killed, and that Joe Bonanno's son Bill was in the room next door when Magliocco gave the order. Further in the FBI document, Tommy Ryan counters Carlo Gambino by stating that the commission had met with Bonanno over the Arizona and California matter, and that the commission had rejected Bonanno's plans, and that matter was considered closed. Tommy Ryan stating that there was no active beef over that. Tommy Ryan then moves on to talk about the murder plot. The document reads, Eboli, continuing in his reply to Gambino, attacks Gambino's second claim against Bonanno. What are you telling me about Joe Magliocco? I was there when Joe Magliocco took a plea to this thing. He admitted the charge, and he was asked by everybody on the commission if anyone else had anything to do with this order that he gave out, and he says no. This son, Bill Bonanno, who was in the other room, he's married to Joe Magliocco's daughter, niece, or somebody in the family, and this is why he was there. Eboli continuing, Carl, now, do you have foundation? Do you have proof that he took part in this thing here? Could you prove this here? Quoting Gambino, no, we can't prove it. Eboli, well, then where's the beef? Eboli says, Carl, I was always taught one thing. When you got a beef, you got to have a foundation. You got no foundation. You keep quiet until you find it. Eboli continuing, well, Jerry turned around and says, well, if Tommy's right, maybe we should ask questions and try to find a different way. In a nutshell, Tommy Ryan has cut down Gambino's claims that Joe Bonanno was involved in a murder plot against him, stating that Joe Magliocco never implicated Joe Bonanno directly, and that the other evidence involving Bill Bonanno is essentially circumstantial. Tommy Ryan believing that at that present time they didn't have enough concrete evidence to take action. Jerry Catena then backs up Tommy Ryan, stating that perhaps they should be asking more questions about the whole situation. It is ultimately decided that the commission will allow Sam DeCavalcante to deliver a fifth and final message requesting Joe Bonanno appear before them. In this FBI file and in several others, it is then documented how Tommy Ryan travelled to Chicago to seek counsel from Sam Giancana and Paul Ricca. One report stating that Sam Giancana said, why don't you just kill this guy? Why do you want to send him a message for? What you're doing is giving the guy an opportunity to strengthen his position and give you trouble. Now, we don't want no trouble. Interestingly, Tommy Lucchese was also present when Sam Giancana said this. With regards to Tommy Ryan's conversation with Paul Ricca, the FBI file shows, Eboli says that he also addressed a few remarks to Ricca, saying, hey Paul, when I got to tell you something, I talked to you the same way as I talked to Vito. But what I want to talk about over here is between you and I. I don't want you going back talking to Sam, and I don't want Sam going back and talking with Tommy Brown. I'm not coming here to say anything. I want to give you my opinion now that you asked me. So he says, listen, first of all, he says, it's true. Joe Bonanno has the right to ask for these three guys, he says, but in a case like this, it is a technicality. When they sent Angelo Bruno, and he is now representing the commission, you should have listened to him. If this guy is honest, if the guy has nothing to worry about, but by him not coming in, Bonanno, it makes you believe he got something to worry about. Paul Ricca clearly stating that he feels that Joe Bonanno has something to hide. A few days later, Mike Genovese meets with his brother Vito, and then the following day, Mike meets with Tommy Ryan. Tommy Ryan and Mike Genovese have decided not to tell Vito Genovese of the present trouble concerning Joseph Bonanno and his fight with the Commission. Their conversation went as follows. Mike: I spoke to you about doing anything. Tommy: yeah, Carl said the same thing. Mike: leave it alone. What the hell's the difference? We'll go along this way. But outside of that, he's okay. Tommy: he asked nothing about it. Mike: just if everybody is alright. Tommy: I says, but he ain't gonna know nothing from Mike. Mike ain't gonna tell him, I says. But these guys in there in the can, they find out things before we do outside. Mike: yeah, but if he heard it, he would have asked me. Tommy: yeah, but eventually he will. Mike: yeah, well, because... Tommy: the first guys that go to the can and they start shaping them up, the first guys that hit there from NY. This conversation occurred on the 25th of September 1964, and it is interesting to note that not only had they both decided not to advise the boss of their family about a serious commission matter, but that Carlo Gambino had said the same thing. Perhaps Mike Genovese and Tommy Ryan didn't want to burden Vito whilst he was incarcerated. We can only speculate. But did Carlo Gambino have an ulterior motive for keeping Vito Genovese in the dark? What Mike Genovese and Tommy Eboli do agree on is that Vito will find out about everything in due course when New York mobsters land in Vito's prison and update him. Several other meetings are held, and it is decided to tell all captains and soldiers from all families that they are not to do any business with the Bonannos. The Commission also wants to meet with several captains from the Bonanno family and see if they are standing behind their boss Joe Bonanno, or if they are aligned with the Commission. In October, a few weeks later, Tommy Ryan tells Michael Genovese about another meeting that was held at his house in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. The FBI file on this reads: Eboli further confided that Carlo Gambino and Thomas Lucchese want war, but implies that they want someone else to do their work for them. Tommy Ryan also stated that at this meeting, Catena confided to Eboli that Thomas Lucchese was working on something, and within a few days they would know a spot where Joe Bonanno is going to go. Catena confided that Lucchese may need assistance of a couple of men to work along with them. Eboli replied that if they, Lucchese family, couldn't handle the situation, we will take care of it, but we are working alone. It is interesting to note that the Genovese family would rather handle the whole hit on Joe Bonanno themselves, rather than loan out a couple of guys to help the Luccheses. Towards the end of this file, we see some of the concerns of Tommy Ryan. Eboli appears very worried about Bonanno's situation. This thing is going to get real bad, Mike. Eboli also thinks Vito Genovese would direct Sam Giancana from Chicago be called upon for more frequent advice in this matter. The remark about seeking further advice from Sam Giancana is interesting, as we know that he would simply whack Joe Bonanno, as he had previously stated. It also appears that Tommy Ryan feels that if Vito Genovese was on the street and not locked up, that he would have taken control of the whole Bonanno situation in a better manner than the Commission had at that point. Ultimately, Joe Bonanno ignored the 5th request from the Commission to come and defend himself. However, Joe Bonanno was never hit. He was removed from the Commission and would later become involved in a civil war with a Commission-backed faction of his family. In the end, Joe Bonanno failed in his attempts at a comeback. It is interesting to note that prior to the Bonanno Civil War, Tommy Ryan stated that Tommy Brown and Carlo Gambino don't want to stick their neck out. They don't want no open fight. Perhaps indicating that Lucchese and Gambino would rather have another family do the fighting than get involved directly themselves. Tommy Ryan later implied that Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese would run and go into hiding if Joe Bonanno had come at them in all-out war. The source of this information is listed in the FBI files as NY3986C, but due to the comprehensive verbatim recall of the conversations, it has been speculated that this information was the product of an illegal wiretap, disguised in the file as an informer. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.